Welcome back to the Lumiose Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about the things that were cut from Pokemon Sun and Moon. For those who don't know, there is a giant thing that has happened recently in the Pokemon community. Basically, GameFreak got hacked, and this hacker has released information, a terabyte worth of information on Pokemon games past, present, and even Pokemon games future. We're not talking about the future stuff today, but we are going to be talking about some stuff that we now know from this giant leak that were supposed to be in Pokemon Sun and Moon, but ultimately got scrapped. We've already done this for X and Y, so if that interests you, because there's a lot of really cool stuff there that maybe even could be argued are something that we could see pop up in ZA, you could check out that video. But until then, let's talk about Sun and Moon. So let's get to the thing that we all care the most about, right? And that is the new Pokemon. There were a lot of Pokemon cut from Pokemon Sun and Moon. Not only this, but Pokemon Sun and Moon introduced the fan favorite feature of regional variants. Now, when these were done in Sun and Moon, these were only for the Generation 1 Pokemon, Gradually, this got expanded to other Pokemon like Linoon or even Zorua, but this first batch was only Kanto Pokemon. So likewise, we have a lot of scrapped regional forms, and they also were Kanto Pokemon. So starting off, we have Rhyhorn. Rhyhorn was supposed to get a variant as well as Rhydon. It was going to be electric rock type. Interestingly enough, this is labeled as Talonflame Killer. So if that isn't the most metal thing I've ever heard, I don't know what is. But yeah, this was supposed to be some type of Talonflame killing Rhyhorn and Rhydon. There was no Rhyperior for this because, again, we're doing all Gen 1 Pokemon. And perhaps that's even why this was scrapped, was because maybe people would have probably expected there to be a Rhyperior as well, and then there isn't one, so that could have been upsetting. So it makes sense why it was scrapped, and was very likely replaced with the Alolan Geodude line, as those are also electric rock type. And then we have, interestingly enough, Scyther, and Scyther's a similar situation. It was Bug Fairy, and they specifically made the note that if you were to evolve it, it would evolve into a regular Scizor. So can definitely see why they scrapped this one, right? If I'm someone who's just casually playing this Pokemon game and I see there's a regional variant of Scyther and I'm like, oh my gosh, that means there's probably a regional variant of Scizor. So I catch the Scyther, I give it the Metal Coat, I trade it, and it's the same Scizor. And I can't go back now either, because once Pokemon evolve, they've evolved. You can't go back and undo their evolution. So that would really be disappointing. Definitely see why they scrapped this one. We had a Water Fairy Seal and a Water Fairy Dugong. Also makes sense why they scrapped this one. These are Seal-based Pokemon, and we did get a Sea Lion Water Fairy type in our starter, Primarina, so I can see why the double up there. Maybe just Game Freak wouldn't want to do that. We also have a Fighting type Snorlax. Now, what's interesting thing about this is Fighting types are like athletic, right? Like they're more active. So the first thing that I thought of when I read about this was, I wonder if maybe this was supposed to be a more awake Snorlax, and if this was maybe even reworked into Snorlax's Z move, Pulverizing Pancake. You see Snorlax like kind of wake up, and then he's like running, and he jumps super high in the air. He's doing all these like crazy athletic feats. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but that was kind of something that spoke to me about that. I also could have totally seen this Flying type Snorlax being Hala's ace. Just because, Hala's kind of a bigger guy, and he's a fighting type expert, so this would be a bigger Pokemon, also a fighting type. I think they'd work well together. He's often kind of paired with Hariyama or Crabominable, which kind of fit that body type as well. So, I don't know, just an interesting thought on that. Now, there were a lot of non-regional variant, just new Pokemon that were scrapped from these games. First off, probably the most saddening one is a flying type evolution was planned for these games but was scrapped. Interestingly enough, the reason this Pokemon was scrapped was because Game Freak felt it looked too similar to a fan design. Obviously, we don't know what fan design, but they said that it looked too similar to a fan design, and since Eevee, its evolutions are such big Pokemon, they kind of didn't want a Pokemon that would be heavily marketed and would be a big selling point of this game to look so similar to a fan design. So, that's kind of an interesting topic of our fan designs hurting the Pokemon fan base. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting topic. I'm not here to have it today, but just throwing out that fun question. Then we did have Turtonator was originally supposed to be the last Pokemon in a 3-stage line, so I had 2 pre-evolutions. Obviously, these did not happen. It was made a one stage and made a kind of counterpart or version exclusive to Drampa. Maybe Turtonator was even originally our pseudo legendary, who knows. Then we also had a Rabombi evolution. No idea what this would have looked like, but that's interesting to note. And then also with Bruxish, we know that Bruxish was a part of a two-stage line. We do not know what was kept though. Like, is Bruxish the evolution and they kept the evolution, or was Bruxish actually the baby form and they scrapped the evolution? No way of knowing, but that is interesting that Bruxish was supposed to be a two-stage line. There was also a Basilisk Pokemon, not the one from Harry Potter, but like the little lizards who can run on water. But they deemed that the design of it looked too similar to Salazzle, so it was ultimately scrapped. Maybe this could have been a male evolution to Salandit. I don't know. Like a lava Basilisk, it can run on lava. That would have been really cool, but it didn't happen. We have a Mini Honey Pokemon, which for those who don't know is like this mythological dwarf creature in Hawaiian or Polynesian folklore. You know, I don't know too much about them, but that's what they are. They come from Hawaiian myth, and they were supposed to be a thing, but it was scrapped. There was also a Tararoot Pokemon. Whatever this thing is, it's you know, just a classic little vegetable, I guess, or a root technically. Yeah, I can't say that I missed this one per se, but interesting that it was going to be there, I guess. Then we had a chicken Pokemon. It was going to be a normal type chicken Pokemon, 2 stages. I hate that we don't have this. We only have one chicken Pokemon in the Torchic line. You can make arguments for Moltres or Tapu Koko, but either way, like pure chicken, we really only have Torchic, and I would have loved another one, but we didn't get that. Now, possibly the most interesting things to come out of this Teraleak about Sun and Moon are 2 scrapped fossil Pokemon. Specifically, one fossil was supposed to be a Wailmer that lived on land, and one fossil was supposed to be a Bagon that never learned to fly. Now, what's interesting about this is this was for Gen 7, but 2 generations later, about 5-ish years later, 6 years later, came Scarlet and Violet. And in these, we did get Citadel and Cetitan, a land whale Pokemon that they even say is closely related to Wailmer. Interesting. And then we did get a past version of Salamence. Now, this past version of Salamence, Roaring Moon, is capable of flight, but it is kind of interesting that the 2 scrap fossils were a past Bagon and a Wailmer on land, and we now have a land whale related to Wailmer and a past Salamence in the same generation. Just really interesting. It shows that Game Freak didn't scrap that idea, just kind of said, hey, throw that on the shelf, hang on to that, you know, and that's always interesting to me when they do that. A few little details about Pokemon. Dhelmise was originally going to be a Steel Ghost type. Now, this was kind of worked into it because Dhelmise has an ability called Steelworker, where it gets stabbed from Steel-type moves as if it were a Steel type, just defensively it is a Grass and Ghost type. And then also, Mimikyu was supposed to have other forms. Don't know what these forms would have been. You could speculate that since it was a popular Pokemon like Pikachu, the other one would have been Eevee, or, let's face it, probably Charizard. Very possibly Charizard. Maybe Meowth. I don't know. Would have been a Gen 1 Pokemon, though. I think we're all in agreement there. Also, Zygarde. Zygarde appeared in the Sun and Moon games and was supposed to be more closely tied to Guzzlord, and its kind of plot was revolving around it. The reason it was in Alola was supposed to be around Guzzlord. This has always been something speculated by fans, and in fact, they even kind of, a good argument for this, rather, would be that you find Guzzlord in the exact same cave you find Zygarde in Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so that's interesting to note for sure. Also, it makes a lot of sense because Zygarde's here to protect the ecosystem, and probably the Ultra Beast most damaging to the ecosystem is Guzzlord. So, you know, just look at what happened in the Ultra Ruin. Now, another thing that was supposed to return from X and Y was going to be Sky Battles. Sky Battles are, of course, one of the most I'm kidding. They're kind of universally hated, honestly. But what will have happened with Sky Battles this time around is anytime your Pokemon and your opponent's Pokemon use Fly or Bounce, it would change the battle into a Sky Battle, which is definitely a really cool concept. But there's questions there. Like, if I have my Politoed use Bounce, is my Politoed now flying in the air for the Sky Battle? I don't know, but it is interesting to note, I guess. And then if you fly again, does it become a Space Battle? There's so many questions. Now, there were a lot of features scrapped from these games. I'm going to just be completely frank with you, and I'm going to cheat here so I can read off some of the kind of smaller ones, like you were supposed to be able to cancel egg hatching so that you could kind of change the IVs of the Pokemon hatching from the egg. You're supposed to be able to change your Pokemon's Pokeballs. So if you caught your Pokemon in a Pokeball, but you're like, oh man, I like Great Balls more, you were going to be able to change its Pokeball from a Pokeball to a Great Ball. There was a superhero feature. You were supposed to be a superhero, running around Alola doing superhero things. A little random, but you could argue this was kind of reworked into basically what they did with the anime, where like, I forget what they called themselves, but Ash and the Alola gang were basically superheroes, going around saving people from the Ultra Beast threats. There was supposed to be a ball that would combine features of other Pokeballs. You know, many Pokeballs have like special qualities, like for example, a Dust Ball is better at catching Pokemon at night, and a Love Ball is better at catching Pokemon of the opposite gender of your Pokemon. Well, you were supposed to be able to have some kind of mixed ball that would combine traits like that, so it would hypothetically catch a Pokemon at night and also of an opposite gender, like have both those boosts. So that's neat, I guess. There would have been a feature where your Pokemon would beg to battle. So, like, you're about to begin a battle, and it would say, like, hey, Pikachu's really wanting to battle. And if you were like, okay, Pikachu, you can battle, then instead of Young Goose, then Pikachu would get a little bit of an experience boost. Now, look, the games don't need any ways to give Pokemon more of an experience boost. That's kind of been a big complaint, is that they get experience just fine, thanks. But I would have really liked this, because it kind of adds some character to your Pokemon and makes it feel a little more immersive. Like, you see moments like that in the anime, right? Where, like, Ash's Pikachu will be like, hey, Ash, you know, I know you're about to send out Charizard or whoever, but I'd really like to take this one. So that would have been neat. I would have liked that a lot. But again, we don't really need the experience boost thing. We also had a Pokejobs thing. And this isn't like the Pokejobs from Sword and Shield where you send your Pokemon on jobs. This would have been a Pokejob that you do. So like you can go be a breeder. You can go be a Pokemon Ranger. You can go coach trainers. Things like that would have been done. There were also supposed to be side quests. This could have been connected. And in fact, some side quests were supposed to be added in a DLC for Sun and Moon. Pretty wild. This just would have been your standard side quest stuff, like kind of how we got in Legends Arceus, or comparable to like the Zelda games. We kind of did have some side quests if you think about it in Sun and Moon, or at least in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. They just weren't as categorized as well, excuse me. But yeah, that's interesting to note. They were going to be more fleshed out, and there was going to be a lot more of them. There was supposed to be a dollhouse feature. Not really sure what this would have done. You would have had figure battles. I don't know why this was needed, but I understand why it was scrapped. We also had a Pokemon stage thing. This would have been done in Festival Plaza, and it looks like it would have been like the Pokemon contest equivalent of this gen. You know, it didn't seem like anything crazy, but basically you would put on a performance with your Pokemon, both the trainer and the Pokemon. So I guess it's kind of neat if you're into that sort of thing. I don't really care that this is gone. We had helper Pokemon. These would have been like little Pokemon that would have helped you in battle. I'm glad this feature was scrapped because it just sounds like a lot of extra lore that I don't really care about, to be honest. Like, I don't like the idea of there being a helper Pokemon, so it's a brand new Pokemon design, but I can't have it on my team, and it's instead like locked to being a little guy that just sits on my Pikachu's knee or something. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. There were supposed to be scrapped ride Pokemon. They had a lot of concept art for a lot of different ride Pokemon. Now, honestly, maybe these weren't even planned for us to use, but were just planned for, like, you'd see other people riding them in the overworld. But interestingly enough, there was, like, Vivian, and it kind of showed it could lift the trainer over ledges, so maybe this would be how you jump over those ledges, like, from the way you're not supposed to jump to. We all know them, you know, they're in every Pokemon game. And then there was also Weezing and Arbok. Not sure what Weezing will have done, because at the time it only had Levitate, but Arbok, perhaps this could have been an Intimidate thing. Intimidate actually lowers the chances of you riding and running into wild Pokemon, so maybe while riding Arbok, its Intimidate would kind of be making it where you're less likely to run into wild Pokemon. Just speculation on my part, no evidence of that, just again, speculating. There was also supposed to be gym scouting. You were supposed to, after beating the league, hear from Kukui that, hey, we've got our league now, but other leagues have gyms. So you need to go around and you need to find 8 gym leaders, and you will be able to scout people, including people you met on your journey like Dexio, Cena, or even some of the trial captains, and make them gym leaders. And then you could inspect their gyms by taking them on daily. This is also how Ryuki factored in. He was always kind of a mystery character, which makes sense because he did serve as kind of the fake gym leader of that fake gym in Melee City and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So that makes a little more sense for Ryuki. He could have been the dragon type gym leader that you recruited. Instead of Z-moves, there was supposed to be an aura-like feature where your Pokemon would get like an aura boost. This was, in my opinion, very likely reworked into the same aura boost that you see the Ultra Beasts or even the Totem Pokemon get in these games. That likely would have been the gimmick at one point, or something very similar to that, which is interesting. Honestly, I know Z-moves aren't exactly the most beloved gimmick, but I like Z-moves more than this idea. Don't know why, just feel like they're a little more exciting. They're a bit of a bigger selling point, and maybe that's why Pokemon ended up going with Z-moves over this whole aura idea. There was supposed to be diving. Diving was supposed to return this game, and not only that, but there would have been cave diving, where like you'd have to kind of submerge underwater and occasionally come up for air in the cave and, you know, try to reach the destination to get an item, a Pokemon, whatever it might be. If you did not submerge in time and you know, freaking drown, you would just wake up on the shore of whatever island you're near. So kind of interesting that not only was there a dive feature, but they were going to incorporate like a kind of breathing feature too, because every game like Zelda, all these games have it where when you dive down, you got a water supply, right? You got an air supply rather while you're underwater, and when it runs out, you freaking die. Because that's a fun fact about people, y'all. People die when they drown. So yeah, it would have been interesting to do this, but no, scrap diving altogether. But now we get to the thing that most depresses me. I'm even gonna double check, make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, we did. One more thing before we get to the thing that most depresses me. Survival Island. Survival Island would have been an island with these giant mecha Pokemon. You would run around. It would be a multiplayer thing, so you'd be with other real people running around trying to survive these mecha Pokemon attacking you. Kind of like that one anime episode, so that's pretty interesting. But this was kind of an early raid system, which makes sense because, I don't know if y'all remember this, but in Sword and Shield, when they announced the raid systems, people were like, oh, they're doing that thing that Go's doing. And it was really funny because the Pokemon company actually went, no, we not. We were working on this for a long time. We worked on this before Go, which I always thought was funny because, like, why'd they have to say that? Why'd they have to say, you know, like, we were first? But regardless, they were first. This proves it. They were developing a raid system for Pokemon Sun and Moon. A little different because it was the Survival Island thing, but it would have worked, at least the part where you're battling the Mecha Pokemon would have worked like raids. Now the thing that most depresses me, the Battle Cruise. That's right, folks. We were supposed to have a Battle Frontier equivalent in Pokemon Sun and Moon. This would have been the Battle Cruise. It would have multiple different facilities on it. And not only that, but since it's a cruise ship, it would be traveling around and docking at different ports. And not just ports in Alola, folks, but ports around the Pokemon world. So you might dock at Castelia City. You might dock at Vermilion City. I doubt they had plans for you to be able to get off and visit these cities, but they did have plans for characters from these cities to get onto your boat, and then you could recruit them and have them be in your battle facilities on this cruise ship. So if you dock at Castelia, yeah, sure, Iris might pop on, or maybe Alder will pop on. You dock over at Vermilion City, maybe Lieutenant Surge or Lance will climb aboard. Things like that. Don't know all the characters that were planned. I imagine all the ones that we see appear in Sun and Moon, like Wally, Grimsley, Cynthia, Red, Blue, Annabelle, etc., etc. I imagine all of them were planned, but perhaps we could have gotten even more, because like the only Unova character is Grimsley, I believe. So probably would have gotten more. I'm depressed. Anywho, that's all the stuff that was scrapped from Pokemon Sun and Moon. If you could pick one thing, be it a Pokemon, a feature, whatever it might be, one thing to bring back and make it an actual thing, let me know what your pick would be. Mine would be the Battle Cruise. Can you tell? It'll be the Battle Cruise. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all our future videos. And until next time, I'll see all of you later.